This holiday season, step aboard a Seattle tradition, the Argosy Cruises Christmas Ship Festival. Take in the holiday magic on the official Christmas ship, the Spirit of Seattle, adorned in hundreds of sparkling lights as she brings festive cheer to waterfront communities across Puget Sound. Enjoy live onboard caroling from local choirs, holiday-inspired drinks, and of course, Santa himself. With every ticket, Argosy donates to the Seattle Times Fund for Those in Need, supporting several local charities. Create memories that sparkle. Visit argosycruises.com and book your Christmas ship cruise today. This is CityCast Seattle. I'm Jane C. Hu, and here's what Seattle's talking about. Today on CityCast Seattle, a crackdown on unlicensed food vendors and the future of local law enforcement surveillance. But first, the latest on the election. Joining me for that is creative producer Sam J. Leeds. Welcome, Sam.
Hi, Jane. It's a big moment for us.
I know. We just refreshed our pages to look at the results and, drumroll please, Katie Wilson and Bruce Harrell are neck in neck. And currently, Katie Wilson just pulled ahead of Harrell by 91 votes. 91.
Oh my God, it is tight.
I knew it was going to be tight. I didn't realize it was going to be this tight. How are you feeling, Sam?
My heart is racing. I'm not going to lie. I have been staring at the King County election results page for like the last half hour, just hitting refresh again and again. And the thing that is really standing out to me right now is the fact that 91 votes is 0.04%. And the write-ins right now are at 0.38%. So there are more write-ins than there are votes separating Katie and Bruce at this moment.
I would like to submit a records request to find out who was written in. Who are people writing in? Of course, it's not over yet. As of Monday evening, about 272,000 ballots had been counted. King County elections in this latest drop counted about 38,000 new ballots. And in that batch, Katie Wilson took about 55.5% of those. Harrell took about 44%. So in the remaining roughly 6,000 ballots that King County Elections has left to count, Wilson will need to get about 54.6% of the outstanding ballots. That is not counting the 2,000 or so that have been challenged due to signature discrepancies, or I think in some cases people just didn't sign. So now is a great time to go on the King County election site and make sure that your ballot has been counted. It's pretty easy. You just enter your name and either your birth date or I believe your mailing address. And it should be able to pull up your info. You can also, if you want, bully your friends if you know their birthday or their address and check to make sure their vote has been counted. I did that to my partner.
Yeah, if you have your friends' star charts and you know their birth dates for astrology reasons, you can use them for that too. And also the Wilson campaign is putting out calls for volunteers to go and do some door knocking to help cure people's ballots. So if that's something that you find yourself having some spare time to do, you can also sign up and help with that.
Sam, do you know when the deadline for ballot curing is?
I believe it is November 24th, and similar to when election results drop every day, it is at 4:30 p.m.
It seems like there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I honestly was wondering if we would have results by Thanksgiving. However, it does seem like we might have some more steps in the process. I saw that if there is a margin of less than 2,000 votes, that triggers an automatic recount. And right now, given that it is 91 votes, seems like we could be headed in that direction if the remaining votes that have yet to be counted kind of echo what's going on here.
The other sort of piece of this is that a manual recount is required if the difference between the top two candidates is less than 150 votes. It seems like probably we'll get out of manual recount territory and into machine recount territory, which, you know, saying a prayer for the good folks at King County Elections that they don't have to do a manual recount.
Yes, Tuesday's a holiday and they will be working anyway.
So if we end up in recount territory, that would likely mean that we wouldn't have final results until early December.
So it wouldn't even be before Thanksgiving.
I'm sorry, Jane.
I
I
was
hate to break it
joking
to
when I
you.
said that last week, and now
I
it
know,
seems
and
like
here
it
we
could be
are.
possible. I think I even remember hearing you say last week that a manual recount would be triggered if the difference is less than 150 votes. And I was thinking, doesn't apply, probably won't happen. I mean, there are
Hmm.
hundreds of thousands of voters who are going to participate in this election. 150, that's such a small margin. And yet,
Here we are at 91.
we will see.
I've had multiple friends who have said to me, though, as much as they're sort of, biting their nails off in this process, they're also really excited because for them, it's a proof that their vote actually does matter. And I do think, when the margins are this thin, it really shows you that, making that last minute trek to the ballot box was worth it.
You hear that, people who did the write-ins? Next time.
Choose somebody real.
Well, it seems like we will just have to sit tight, let King County elections do their job. Thank you for doing your service, and
We're
we
saluting
will...
you.
Yeah, you can't see the salute, but it does seem like we could be still waiting quite a while for results. Hey Sam, have you ever been to Walla Walla?
Jane, I haven't been in a really long time.
Like, when was the last time you were there?
I think I went in college. I went to go rock climbing, and I remember finding out about the Walla Walla sweet onions.
Ooh. Well, I think you should go back. You could enjoy the holiday in this cozy and charming small town, and it's located in the heart of the Pacific Northwest in southeastern Washington state, just a 4-hour drive away from Seattle. It has a walkable, historic, and adorable downtown, and the Walla Walla Valley is home to more than 130 wineries with great food and wine. So you get a little snack, get a little drink.
That sounds great.
Time slows down in Walla Walla, and that's the point. You can experience a vibrant and relaxing getaway, move at your own pace, and do as much or as little as you want. How does that sound, Sam?
I mean, that sounds like exactly what I need to do this winter.
Yeah, good way to survive the big dark as well.
Truly.
Go to wallawalla.org to plan your visit today. Corner food vendors have become many Seattleites' favorite spots to get a late night bite, but at the same time, there have been reports that they are being shut down by local authorities. Joining us to chat about this, Brett Hamil, writer, performer, and the cartoonist behind the weekly series Doom Loop. Brett, do you have a favorite corner food cart?
Yes, El Asadero right on Rainier, right near my house. Delicious carnitas, solid, huge portions. Love it.
Sam, what about you?
That one's also a favorite of mine. There's also a spot, I don't know the name of it, that pops up kind of by the park on the corner of Seattle Central College on the hill. Really good tacos and is open late. So you can hang out in between activities on the hill, which is really ideal.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you all just said kind of speaks to the appeal. Like, they're open late, huge portions, good food. I mean, clearly these spots are really popular. And I feel like in recent months, I've seen a ton of videos of people talking about their favorite ones and just word of mouth, people being like, check out this spot. I mean, what do we feel like their proliferation means about what we want in our food scene here in Seattle and what might be missing?
We want quick, inexpensive, large portion meals that are easily accessible from major thoroughfares. It's a no-brainer. We need more food carts. We need more food vendors in Seattle.
And yet, over a dozen have been shut down the last couple months within Seattle city limits. And if we're talking about just the general Puget Sound, I think it's way more than that. I think at the end of last year, the Seattle Times reported that there were over 70 shut down in 2024. I mean, it's tough because the King County Health Department's list of violations, they post them all online, and if you look, you can actually see what the violations are. One of the violations is always, operating without a permit, but it also includes stuff like insufficient refrigeration or operating without hand washing facilities. When you all are eating at these spots, do you care? Do we care?
My favorite spot before the pandemic was a school bus that hadn't moved in years, parked on the side of Rainier, with no visible sanitary stuff. It was good food. It came out hot. I think that the bar is a little lower for food trucks than it might be for walking into a diner. And the reason for that is because you go to the food trucks haven't gotten you sick.
Yeah, I have a couple of people in my larger circle who have gotten food poisoning at various, spots that are kind of pop-up food vendors. But I think most of them have gone back for seconds anyway. So I think there's kind of a sense of like, you know what you're getting yourself into. And I guess I feel very like caught between the idea that obviously like you should be able to get food that doesn't make you sick in the city, and also the fact that like restaurants in our city seem to be unable to stay open. The turnover rate is so high, and there aren't a lot of places that are open late that are cheap. And so I feel like for folks who are working non 9 to 5 jobs, for people who are out late and want to grab food before going home, like, there's just not a lot of good options. And if this is what's presenting itself and it's accessible for the people who might not be able to afford all of the licensing or to, rent commercial space because it is astronomically expensive, how do we sort of find a happy medium between health and accessibility?
Yeah, I feel like the pandemic really killed any late night scene in Seattle. It's coming back. People are trying. But it's true. If you're out past even 10, it's like, where do I go?
I also think that there's sort of a bacteriological truce involved in eating at a food truck. I mean, you're eating food out of a truck or a old school bus. You're probably not expecting the same sorts of amenities as a fully functional restaurant kitchen.
There's a level of trust involved, for sure.
Yes.
People are smart enough to be eating things that are very heavily cooked. Like, I'm not going to be buying street sushi.
Yeah, I'm not like getting hollandaise sauce. I'm not doing like an eggs Benedict from a food truck. I mean, and they're not doing eggs Benedict at a food truck either,
There's a Shell station on Beacon Hill that serves fried catfish, and for years it has been reputed as the best catfish in the city.
Oh, that sounds so
good. Out of a gas station.
It sounds so good. And I guess when you're talking about knowing people who have gotten sick from a food truck and then still gone back, like, first of all, kudos, that is commitment. But second, like, I've gotten food poisoning from a permitted restaurant, like sometimes that just happens, But at the flip of that, I know that the Washington State Restaurant Fair Play Coalition, it's a group of around 200 restaurant owners, has been petitioning health departments to try and crack down on these unpermitted vendors. And like in their petition, actually like included a list of them. And I don't know, I guess I'm curious, what do you all think of that? How do you all feel about this restaurant group trying to get these food trucks shut down?
I think that the organized restaurant groups have been a reliable force of sort of retrograde politics since the 15 Now movement. That is what kind of acted as a unifying force to align them all politically. So I'm a little suspect now as to whether this is the problem they're painting it to be.
Brett, can I ask, for folks who aren't familiar with that, was that the movement to have a $15 an hour minimum wage? And then that restaurant group, were they against it?
Yes. So they were like groups that got together and directly, opposed 15 Now. And I think that was a sort of coalescing moment for them to become more politically organized. That is definitely something that created that network, hardwired that network into existence.
Interesting. So you feel like it might not be that they might have other motivations here?
I feel that they're organized in such a way that they already have the ear of the more moderate to conservative politicians. So you have to start asking yourself, why in 2025, when we have a massive structural budget deficit and of course, historic levels of homelessness and housing unaffordability, is this the focus of city government, to shut down food trucks?
It's true. I mean, at a time when restaurants are really struggling, I can kind of see the argument of like, well, we had to go through this whole process and we're paying all of these fees and taxes and doing things above board. And then there are these folks who are coming in and not doing that.
Sure. Well, there's the example of the food truck up on Aurora that is beloved by the local community that was getting shut down by, a swarm of police officers. Like, is that kind of draconian measure really necessary? Do we really need a crackdown for this sort of thing? Is this how we need to be deploying the city's resources? And of course, the other unspoken question is the fact that many of these trucks and booths are run by Latinos who may or may not be documented. Is this the time to start cutting away at their livelihood? This might have been a fallback position for some of them that are really nervous about the immigration enforcement going on. So once again, is this the best use of resources?
Yeah. And speaking of resources, I do wonder what resources are available to folks. I mean, I know that the health department definitely tries to be as clear as they can about what the requirements are and the steps that you need to take in order to go through the proper permitting process. But even just in the process of trying to figure out, like, okay, say I want to open a food cart, like what would I need to do? I actually went onto the website, spent a few minutes trying to figure out how to get those permits. One of the key links that they had included didn't work. I got 404'd. And it seems like at minimum, you've got to submit a plan. You have to wait a couple of weeks for that to be approved. You got to pay a fee, which at least is $100. I think it depends on what you want to offer. There might be add-on fees to that too. And I mean, I'm just imagining if English is not my first language, for instance, and navigating this bureaucracy is just not something you've done before. It can be complicated to figure out even how to do it, even if you want to do it the right way.
What you've just walked into is the discussion between, punitive or carceral solutions and solutions that are based on root causes. Why do these people not have the proper permitting? Is there a way to streamline that and make it easier to do? That's generally the progressive impulse, is to address things on that level instead of showing up with, way too many police to shut down a beloved local taco truck.
I mean, Seattle at times does feel like it's populated by a large portion of rule following nerds. I mean, myself included. Where it's well, what are the proper measures that must be taken? Let me do this checklist and make sure that everything is above board. The fact that some people have just skipped that can make people uncomfortable, right? You want to see the health grade that this place has gotten clearly displayed in a visible location. It gives you a sense that someone has done some vetting. I'm not saying that that's what we need, but I can see how there are people who feel strongly about that.
I can't be the only one, though, who looks at the health grade, and if it's mid-tier, I'm oh, the food's going to be good. That's sort of my metric.
I don't think you're wrong. I think there's something to that.
I've had to explain this to my son, that when you go to one of those bargain basement burger joints, we walked into one, he's like, it looks kind of dirty in here. And I'm like, yeah, that's good, bud. Because all these folks do is burgers all day long. And no one is going to be better at creating the platonic ideal of a cheap burger than these folks. So I will overlook the sort of grease accumulated on the walls and such. Hey, the teriyaki joint down the street from my house, I bit down on something in the rice and it cracked my tooth and caused about $1,000 worth of dental work.
Oh,
and you know what? I still go back there. I had to take a break for a while, but the tooth has been fixed and the teriyaki's good. So I'm going to stay loyal.
Dang. Okay. So what I'm learning is that even if it cracks your tooth, even if it gives you food poisoning, if it's good and it's convenient and it's where it needs to be, then we'll keep going, is what I'm hearing. All right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about another exciting topic, surveillance. So last week, ICE arrested multiple people in Redmond. The police department in Redmond also decided to temporarily suspend use of this license plate reader program called Flock. So according to the Redmond police chief, No federal agencies had actually accessed the city's flock data, but this still has a lot of people asking questions about general surveillance in Puget Sound. So, Sam, I know you dug into this a little bit. First of all, like, what is a flock camera and where are they besides Redmond?
Yeah, so Flock is an Atlanta-based security tech company, and they administer these things called automatic license plate readers, which are also called Flock cameras. They're kind of interchangeable. And they're cameras that can be either set up in like a stationary location, so attached to like a light pole or the side of a building or whatever, or inside something like a police patrol car. And they continuously and kind of indiscriminately capture time-stamped and location-stamped photos of any car going by. So they're recording license plate numbers, color, brand of vehicle, anything that's kind of within their view range. And then those photos are added to a searchable database, which is controlled by the customer. So if it's the city of Seattle, if it's the police department, they have control of kind of how that database is accessed and who can search it and how long the photos are kept in the database. The last thing I think is kind of interesting for folks to know about this is that Flock also has a partnership with Amazon's Ring cameras.
Of course.
Where yeah. Police can send out localized requests for footage from neighbors' Ring cameras during an investigation. And it's totally up to the people whose Ring cameras they are, whether or not they want to send that footage. But this has raised concerns for privacy experts because it can circumvent warrant laws.
Brett, do you have a Ring camera?
No, and I'm so opposed to them, and I find them so horrifying and dystopian.
Yeah, and I mean, the flock data, according to the Redmond Police Department, was not shared with federal authorities. People were connecting that to the ICE raids, and it turns out, apparently, that's just a coincidence. But I guess I'm curious, even if this wasn't shared with federal authorities in this case, could it be? Like, it just seems like we've heard enough about data breaches in the world and just general misuse of data that I am curious, like, if there's any indication that that could happen later down the line.
So it has happened, actually. So University of Washington, the Center for Human Rights, put out an article warning about this threat a few years ago. They specifically called out threats to immigrants and to reproductive rights in Washington. Because we are a sanctuary state, right? We're not reporting data out to federal agencies, and we're not putting people in harm's way for coming here to receive reproductive access.
Oh, but the cameras are snitching?
Exactly. So in October, they released another report showing that immigration agencies like ICE and Border Patrol had actually accessed the data from 18 Washington cities, often without, according to the police, those departments knowing that the data had been accessed. A specific example of this that I found so incredibly dystopic is that in May, authorities in Texas were performing a nationwide search of more than 83,000 flock cameras.
Oh, that's a lot.
They were searching for one woman, and the woman that they were searching for had self-administered an abortion. So this obviously is just sort of horrifying to think about, like in terms of the scope of resources being deployed against one woman making a choice about her body. But beyond that, it impacts the King County specifically, because data from a public records request that was shared with the Urbanist shows that the King County Housing Authority was among those agencies sharing flock license plate data in the search for this woman. So, you know, you're not only sort of on the run from these laws being enforced in the state that you live in, but actually on a national scale, there's this sort of like fugitive situation that's happening for people making really specific healthcare choices. Yeah.
To think that this data and this footage is not going to be misused, especially by the Trump administration, is a level of credulity that is breathtaking. And all of these arguments were brought up in arguments against the 24/7 CCTV cameras being set up in Seattle by the ACLU of Washington and other federated groups. And they were just summarily dismissed by the conservative city council supermajority, who said, well, we would never do that. It's so naive to act like we can just be very careful and not, we'll delete the videos after 7 days or 30 days or whatever. It's shockingly insulting that they would try to get us to believe that.
I will say, when I was reading into this, folks on the internet were talking about, experiencing things like a hit and run, or somebody trying to steal their car. And the only way that they were able to find information about the person that hit them or the person that tried to steal their car was through these cameras. And so I guess for me, I have this question of sort of what is the balance here of, using these, the surveillance in order to sort of enforce, enforcement around petty crime versus sort of our general safety.
I mean, I know someone who was the target of a robbery and then felt like they wanted to get a Ring camera for security. I understand that on one level. I also wonder if that's really going to do anything in the long run.
Something that I found really interesting is Erica Evans, who was just voted into office. She was interviewed by The Urbanist and asked about surveillance. And she said, I'll just read the quote that she gave. She says, "I think it's important to be listening to community stakeholders before moving quickly on things like this, especially when we know what's happening at the federal level, the federal government getting access to Department of Licensing records and wanting our mailing record. It just seems like it's not a safe time right now for our communities and what's happening at a federal level."
Yeah, I mean, that brings to mind for me every grainy Ring camera photo I've seen posted on Nextdoor or Facebook or Reddit of people being like, this person stole a package off of my porch, or this person approached my car and I think they took something from it. I mean, yeah, we already have photos and videos all over the place of these things, but the question is that actually making us safer? Are crimes actually being solved from that information? And how are we selecting which crimes to hone in on?
Mm-hmm.
When they were pitching the surveillance cameras at City Council, they had examples of actual crimes that have been prosecuted based on the footage. And I think one of them led to a false arrest.
Yeah, I mean, and also, Sam, that quote that you read from Erica Evans, it makes me wonder, is our city's approach going to change if now that we have a new city attorney coming in?
We're going to need a new mayor. The problem is that Bruce Harrell, when someone says, we've got some new technology, he's like, where do I sign? He loves being seen as this mayor who's like looped into all the high tech stuff. He was the same way with ShotSpotter. If you want to look at that as another example of surveillance tech in Seattle.
Forgot about ShotSpotter
already. Completely ineffective police tech that other cities were in the process of canceling their contracts as he was considering spending a couple million to start up ShotSpotter. The arguments against it are so voluminous and are so well documented. And the argument for it is like, police use technology, catch bad guy. Like that is literally the level of discourse on the pro side for ShotSpotter.
Yeah, for folks who weren't here or maybe weren't paying attention to ShotSpotter, and correct me if my assessment of this was not correct, it was that it was going to analyze any noise that sounded like a potential gunshot. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. And then dispatch police to that location to go investigate. But a lot of studies showed that it was incredibly inaccurate. It was dispatching for things that were not anywhere near a gunshot. And it was also sending police out to locations they didn't need to be at and actually wasting their time in terms of like them actually being available for calls that were coming in that actually did necessitate them. And yeah, it was interesting, Brett, to your point, to see the mayor getting excited about this technology at a time where it was actively being proven to be incredibly inaccurate and cities were canceling contracts.
Do we still have a contract?
No, to our city's credit, they did not move ahead with ShotSpotter, but they moved ahead with Flock and with this real-time crime center.
Yes, Harrell is very happy with the real-time crime center, but it doesn't seem to have yielded any serious prosecutions yet. And then, of course, there's immense reams of civil liberties and equity concerns. So all of these cameras are going to be pointed towards areas around low-income housing and affordable housing. So if you live in the corridors where they throw all the affordable housing, you're under surveillance 24/7. If you live up on a hill in Magnolia, you're nowhere near a camera.
For context for folks, there was a pilot that was running last year. And then in September, City Council voted 7-2 to expand the CCTV coverage into the Stadium District, Capitol Hill nightlife area around Garfield High School. The other locations include the CID, Belltown, Downtown, and Aurora. So when you think about who lives in those areas, it's often low-income folks, people of color, queer people, people who are engaging in like survival type employment. And those are also the folks that are most at risk of, police encounters, and surveillance can be a negative addition to their lives. So I think there's some questions still to be answered there around why City Council voted to move ahead with it anyway.
There was a multi-year concerted effort by legacy media and moderate establishment politicians to depict Seattle as dying. Seattle is dying. Seattle is a crime-filled hellhole.
Right.
But when you actually looked at the crime data, there was a bit of a bump during the pandemic due to the social dislocation of the pandemic mostly. But it is not significantly higher. And in fact, in the 70s and 80s, it was astronomically higher, the crime rates, than they are now. So it's hard to look at that as anything other than a sort of messaging push, which actually paid off. They were able to get a council supermajority and pass any tough on crime legislation with no regard for police accountability within that they wanted. So that's why you have the surveillance cameras. That's why you have weird, extra super illegal bans on things like street racing, which are already illegal, or public drug consumption, which is already illegal.
Or food trucks.
So a lot, I just give me a second. I'll get us some tacos. So they passed all this legislation, some of which was repealed a decade ago because it was ineffective. There is a very well-documented history of why these policies don't work. So for them to bring them back as sort of a show of being tough on crime, and then what they do is they wait for the legacy media to say crime's not as bad, and they can say we won and coast to re-election. Well, things don't work out that way, as we're seeing in the election results. So they've done all their ideas. They've literally, that's it. That was it. I thought there was going to be much more stuff, maybe some drones or something. I don't know, some robots. There's got to be something else. No, they're done with that now. So it's just taco trucks.
The question of whether we're going to get more surveillance in the city is probably going to just remain evergreen. For better or for worse, whether it actually makes us safer or just makes some of us feel safer. Let's leave it there for now. I'm your host, Jane C. Hu. Brett, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And Sam, thanks for bringing your deep knowledge to the pod.
Happy to contribute.
Listeners, we want to hear from you. Send us your news tips, questions, hot goss, or your thoughts about city surveillance by sending an email to seattle@citycast.fm. You can also text us or leave us a voicemail on the CityCast hotline at 206-880-3931. If you're enjoying the podcast, be sure to follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen so you never miss an episode. Or even better, leave us a review. You can get more local news and events delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter. Just go to seattle.citycast.fm. Until next time, see you, Seattle.